I am so glad that you joined me this morning, and today we're actually going to wrap up the segment on parenting styles. Last week we concluded with the authoritative and authoritarian parenting styles, and just so we can go back to those two for a moment, so we can kind of recap the previous show, I want to start back with the authoritarian parenting style. In this style of parenting, children are expected to follow the strict rules established by the parents. This is a parenting style that offers no compromise. There's no sense of independence in this style of parenting for the child, because everything is dictated and defined specifically by the parents. Period. So, listen, don't talk. Speak when you're spoken to. Do as I say, not as I do, are characteristics of this style of parenting. Then there was the authoritative parenting style. Like authoritarian parents, those with an authoritative parenting style establish rules and guidelines that their children are expected to follow. However, this parenting style is much more democratic. Now, we know that there's a difference between Democrats and Republicans, but that's not what we're talking about today. But it's almost along the same lines if you're an authoritarian parent or authoritative parent. So you can make some comparison in those aspects if you choose to. But what you want to look at for the authoritative parent, this parenting style takes a look at circumstances. This parenting style allows feedback, if you want to call it that. This child has been given the opportunity for personal growth with this kind of parenting style. Why? Because they have a say. We know the parents' say is the final say. We know that. We understand that. Sometimes there seems to be a matter of control and power that parents often get locked into that impedes the child's ability to move towards independence. But with this style of parenting, what it actually does is it allows the child's thinking to be challenged not only by you but by the child. But by the child as well. See, when children are in their younger stages of development, there are certain things they should be doing. When they begin to get to a point of asking certain questions, we need to be able to provide them with age-specific answers that lead them to think. Not to give it to them in black or white. Allow them to challenge their thinking. Allow them to analyze, to evaluate their own behaviors. So they can see for themselves, is this the kind of person you want to be? Is this how you want others to see you? As opposed to, this is how I want to see you. My responsibility as the parent is to allow the child to come into self, but with an understanding of norms, values, and morals that are acceptable are acceptable, not just to me, but to society as a whole. Because sometimes our own values are compromised and we put our own stuff into things, and then we make it the child's, and then the child grows up into believing what you, the parent, has given them, and make that society's norms and values, and it's not necessarily so. Case in point, when parents separate, a child is forced to make a conscious decision as to what parent they want to side with. And initially what typically happens is, depending on how they parted ways, the child would come to their conclusion based on what you have said about the other parent, or what they have witnessed about the other parent. That's typically how it happens. Now, in situations where they really didn't know, because they didn't see certain things that were not presented, like they didn't hear the arguments, they didn't see the acts of infidelity or violence, they didn't see all those things, they weren't exposed to those things, because some children aren't. But what happened was, they made a decision based on the relationship that they had with the other parent, based on characteristics that they saw presented by the other parent toward them. Well, you don't listen to me, Dad. You don't listen to me, Mom. Therefore, it has to be your fault because Dad says that you don't listen to him. So I know you don't listen to me, so they begin to make a decision. And oftentimes we fall into the trap of defending ourselves because we don't want to be seen as the bad parent or the one who caused the dismantling of the family. So we somehow methodically put ourselves in the position of being the better parent, whatever that is supposed to mean. And for those of you who are not viewing this show, I'm sitting here with my wonderfully ground hot cup of Java this morning that I didn't have last week. So when we look at the democratic style of parenting, which is labeled as the authoritative parenting style, this parent would not be the parent who would have the need to defend themselves necessarily. This is the parenting style that would allow the child to develop their own thoughts and opinions about the situation. Now, the authoritative parent would then, after listening, help the child work through some of the negative aspects of the separation and integrate the positive perspectives on how this is still going to work. We're still your parents, and this is the way things are going to be, but you have to be flexible. An authoritarian style of parenting does not allow for that. He's gone, she's gone, that's it, there's nothing to talk about. Period. So, today, we'll be covering the permissive parenting style and also the uninvolved style of parenting. When we talk about being permissive parents, sometimes referred to as indulgent parents, have very few demands to make of their children. These parents rarely discipline their children because they have relatively low expectations of maturity and self-control. Permissive parents are generally nurturing and communicative with their children, often taking on the status of a friend more than that of a parent. Now, I'm sure somebody popped right into your mind when I started talking about a permissive parent. I'm sure they did. One of your siblings popped right into your mind. The girl next door popped right into your mind. The father down the street popped right into your mind. Maybe you yourself popped right into your own mind. But something popped into your mind when I started talking about this parent not being a type of parent who is taking the position of a leader in the home, but yet a friend. A friend. I'll let you do what you want to do. If you think that's best, okay. You'll see the destructive pattern of behavior, but still will allow the child to continue to do those things. Why? And we don't look at the why. Oftentimes, we place a label on the individual for being this type of parent. Right, wrong, or indifferent. This is this person's style of parenting. So if this is their style of parenting, we have to come to some kind of compromise where instead of us confronting this person in a manner to make them feel like they're not a good parent, we confront the behavior of the parent. You ever heard the term like not the person, like not what they do? A lot of times we like not the behavior, we like not what the person does, and we make it the person. Therefore we cut off the person, and therefore we cut off our ability to help that person. So the first thing we have to look at is, because I am not in favor of permissive parenting, it does not mean that I now have to chastise this adult like they're my child. And I say adult, but I say it in the sense of when a child, when a teenager, 15, 16, 17, 18 years old, has the responsibility of a child, they are thrust into adult-like responsibilities. So let me put it to you that way. Adult-like responsibilities. When you have to take care of a child, when you have to raise, groom, nurture a child from the point of infancy into adulthood, that is an adult responsibility. Therefore, a child, 15, 16, 17, 18, is still acting in an adult-like role. And we really have a lot of confusion about adulthood being predicated on age, because that's what society says. So that's again why I'm using this term loosely, and you can debate it if you like. I'm open for the debate. But when you look at responsibilities that a child has, and you look at responsibilities that adults have, they are entirely different. But when you integrate them both into an individual who has been thrust into a position to have to take on adult responsibilities, I don't know what you want to call it, but that's what I call it. This is now an adult. Regardless of age, this is now an adult, because I now have full responsibility of another human being, regardless of the input and assistance and the support that I get from my parents, my siblings, other family members, whoever. This is still an adult-like responsibility. So when we look at now this individual who is the permissive parent coming into a situation themselves where they are in need of more development and understanding parenting styles and the significance to the growth and development of a child. Now they're faced with their child having a child. Because when there's no boundaries set, when there's no established expectations of life and lifestyle, then we really compromise the development, and I'm talking about mental development at this point, of the child who is in the position of being raised by a permissive parent. Just think about it for a minute. A lot of times we'll sit down and say, excuse me, I need a sip here. A lot of times we'll sit down and say something is wrong with these children. They're off the chain. And we don't want to look at ourselves. Okay? We don't want to look at ourselves first and foremost. when we look at how many young parents there are out there, and my daughters are included in this young parent because they are 18 when they got pregnant. Well, that doesn't mean that you're necessarily an adult. Again, going back to adulthood being predicated on age, yes, they finished high school. They finished school, and they got pregnant. All three of my daughters got pregnant at the same time, for those of you who do not know. But there are still children. There's still guidelines that they have to adhere to in terms of good quality parenting decisions. It's frustrating for them. Because now those hopes, dreams, and aspirations that they had on their agenda have to now be put on hold. That frustration plays out in the parenting style. Even though my parenting style and their mother's parenting style were almost the same in terms of we didn't see the need for punishment, beating. I'm a talker, so I pretty much will lull them into, you know, compliance, or I can't think of, but their behavior would change because Lord knows they didn't want to hear my mouth. So when I say we need to sit down and talk, or that family meeting, listen, we don't want to keep hearing Dad's mouth. Their mother's the same way. Their mother will talk and talk and talk, and she won't let it go. She's relentless. She'll hold on to something all day long, all week long, reminding you about that behavior. So even though we parented that way, and a lot of those characteristics have trickled down onto two of my daughters, because that's me and their mother's style of parenting. They do that with their children too. They do a lot of talking, but still their frustration plays out a little differently. And that frustration plays out in the manner that it does because of the age that they had children, for one, the responsibility that is involved in having to raise a child, for two, and the fact that they have very supportive parents, for three, who do their best at not letting the children suffer too much in terms of the overwhelming frustration overflowing onto the children's kind of break times. So, similar to that which what was done for my mother, with her having to take responsibility of raising myself and my sister. At some point it was just myself. Sometimes it's frustrating. My mother was a young mother. But I say all this to say that all these individuals who are having children at a much younger age are now those children who are in their 20s. And if they had children in their teens, and they themselves are now entering into, you know, being in their mid to late 20s, well, things have changed, because a lot of times if you make a comparison with the children that were born 10 years prior to them and their conditions, and the children that are now being born, hell, I'm 52. So that means when I was 37, children were a lot different when I was 37. They were more sociable with one another. Now everything has been replaced with social media and all these electronic devices, and you couple that with parenting styles that are not very clear in their roles, especially with that of a permissive parent. There are a lot of permissive parents, and we're not really understanding that, and we need to. There's a lot of permissive parenting. Now, that's not to say there's no authoritative or no authoritarian characteristics there, because there are. But in many cases, even like with my own children, they're more towards a permissive parenting style, which is why we have so many children who are going back and forth with their mouths with their parents. I see it myself with my own grandchildren, how two in particular will go back and forth with their mothers. And again, conversationally, they can sit down and have dialogue with you. They can certainly do that, because their mothers, the mothers have taken on the characteristics of their parents, myself and their mother, in regards to communicating and talking. But the other aspect of it is, because of the undeveloped maturity in both, they get a little sassy with their mouths, and they'll go back and forth. And the mothers will go back and forth with them. When I was coming up, there was no back and forth. There was forth, there was no back. If there was back, there was a back slap. And again, permissive parenting, take a look at it. Uninvolved parenting. An uninvolved parenting style is characterized by few demands, low responsiveness, and little communication. While these parents fulfill the child's basic needs, they are generally detached from their child's life. In extreme cases, these parents may even reject or neglect the needs of their children. I'm sure somebody popped into your mind when I said that. Well, he never did nothing, this, that, and the other. He's not. Listen, I got that. What we need to come to understand again is, why does that style of parenting exist? Why? Even though I was physically available for two of my daughters, physically unavailable for one, I was emotionally unavailable from all three of them. Why? Because I didn't, first of all, I didn't want to be a father. I didn't know what it meant to be a father. I don't know what, at my age, I was so busy running all over God's green earth, just jumping on top of every woman that I could, with no sense of responsibility, not even beginning to think, what if she gets pregnant? Fatherhood didn't pop into my mind. It didn't pop into my mind. I didn't have my first child until I was 24. Until I was 24, I had my first child. But the other piece to it is, I got a few people pregnant in between there. I never knew what it was like to be a parent. The only thing I ever knew is what it was like to be a child. And I only knew that I wanted to have a better life than I was living. That's all I ever knew. And I'm not justifying an uninvolved parent, if you know an uninvolved parent. But we need, if we're going to bring resolve to any of the difficulties that we as parents have, we're going to have to come to understand why some of us parent the way that we do. A parent who is so rigid that they don't listen to their child is no better than a parent who has no involvement whatsoever. A parent who is permissive is no better than, or no less than, a good parent than the authoritative parent.
90 seconds.
An uninvolved parent is uninvolved for a reason. If you're with a person who is an uninvolved parent, you need to talk to them and kind of begin to encourage them. And there's things that you can do to get them more involved in different activities so they can be a more involved parent, as opposed to just letting them just be that kind of parent. Nobody just wants to be uninvolved. Not really.
60 seconds.
And in cases where a person is uninvolved, it usually has something to do with the circumstance they put themselves in, which probably has nothing to do with the child, but more to do with the relationship, or the failed relationship with the mother or father of the child, which is where we need to begin to bridge the gap. And for those who do not have involvement with their children, a lot of times it's based in fear. I don't know how to hold a child and pick a child up, and you got to put it this way and that way. I mean, I'm not responsible for myself. How can I be responsible for a child? A lot of things we have to take a look at. I thank you once again so much for joining me at SoftSpot today. I hope you have a wonderful and prosperous incoming new year. Leave behind those things that were a detriment to 2012 and enter into 2013 moving forward. Not with a bang, but with big things. This is Sabir Aleem. God bless. Be safe. Peace.